Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Joe Meade with me, and it's our first Final Four preview. Joe, it's your Michigan Wolverines going up against Arizona. Uh, Very clearly the two best teams left in this competition, but what are your initial thoughts on this matchup in Indianapolis?
I think this is the game fans really want to see. Now, maybe it's not the game, maybe Duke, Michigan from earlier in the year or Duke, Arizona could have been up there. But the bottom line is, Sean, in terms of Final Four games, this is the showdown everyone wanted to see. I think last year everyone wanted to see Duke, Florida, Duke, Auburn. This is what the fans are getting, and I think a lot of people for most of the year penciled this as their national title game. Clearly Duke gets the number one overall. Michigan and Zona are the two and three, but
That's why it
this
matters.
is this is such a fascinating game because I truly think after watching clearly my team all year and observing Arizona, knowing we were probably on a collision course, this is probably a 5-5 in a 10 game series. There's so many strengths that the other team could go at and so many weaknesses rather that I think both teams could pick apart. I think, before I let Sean get into it, what fascinates me is Michigan's 2 point defense is really, really good. Teams convert under 50%, even on a good night against that 2 point defense. Arizona lives not
Yeah.
necessarily their bread and butter is the 2 point game. Clearly, Burries, Bradley, Karchenkov lately could light it up from three. But I'll tell you this, Sean. It's going to be fascinating for both Mara and Krivas facing a guy who's pretty much their same height.
And
And
yeah, Arizona's offense doesn't go against Michigan's 2 point defense every game. And I think you could
yeah,
turn that around too and say Michigan's defense doesn't go against Arizona's offense every game either.
right.
So I think it's a really, really unique battle. Who's going to win that? Obviously, strength on strength. You talked about the guards a little bit there, Joe. It's Burries and Bradley for the most part for Arizona. They'll bring on, Del Orso can play the two or the
Yep.
three off the bench. But in terms of Arizona versus Michigan, it's Namari Burnett, Trey McKinney, and Cadeau, really. I don't really know who gets the edge there. I think Jaden Bradley's the best guard, and I think Burries might be the second one that you'd take in a draft if you were drafting the guards. But at the same time, like they are a little bit more free, less role defined than the Michigan guards who. Obviously McKinney is a very good player off the bench. Burnett can hit a bunch of threes, and Ellie Cadeau is the point guard. Arizona do have a little bit of two creators at the same time. So I don't really know if there's an edge either way in the guard department. And with all the bruisers down low, it might actually be more of a guards game.
I agree, Sean. And what's crazy is I agree with Arizona's star power at the guard play with Bradley and Burries clearly exceeds Michigan's, especially currently
Yeah,
if people want to make the argument.
if you're talking about the individuals, Arizona's are better, but I think when you put them into Michigan players into their roles, I think it could go either way.
Yeah. Ultimately, Sean, I think for guards, the defining characteristic of this game will be can Michigan capitalize on their open shots? Arizona plays great defense, top five Ken Pom defense still, correct, Sean?
Yeah, I would assume so. They've only gotten better here in the tournament.
And Sean, in games Michigan's lost, the one consistent characteristic in those three losses were sub 30% shooting from three. And it wasn't that Purdue and Duke necessarily locked them up from the 3 point line. They kind of just allowed them to take it, and they bet that Michigan wasn't going to make them. Now, this is a dangerous bet. Michigan's won more games than they've lost, clearly, and teams like Tennessee, more so because of transition, Alabama, and Purdue the first time found out quickly, boy, not a great idea to let Michigan get open threes, especially when they're shooting just below 50% of these games. But that's one way Arizona can immediately widen the gap in that guard matchup because front court, you could make an argument between Leddeborg, Morez, and Mara versus Karchenkov, Koapit, Krivas, and of course Awaka. There's so many similarities down there.
Yeah,
I think probably Krivas a better rebounder for sure than Mara, but Mara's a way more capable offensive player, and we've seen him do well against height this year. Did very well against, well, albeit clearly inferior to Krivas. Christoph Tilly didn't do so bad against TKR and Clough, and conversely, we've seen Perez Johnson lately struggle, and him and Awaka are pretty similar players. Great rebounders, great energy guys. Awaka, of course, being more of a burst Red Bull guy off the bench. And what's probably going to come down to for me there, Sean, is I think Yaxel, similar to the Arizona Guards, as the individual player, at least as of now in college basketball, is better than Pete Karchenkov, even with his run and Krivas.
Yeah,
That's what I'm looking at.
definitely. I think Yaxel is the biggest advantage one way or the other in this game is at the three for Michigan. I Karchenkov is okay, and whether Del Orso is there too, like those two players are really limited is a little bit harsh, but they have their strengths and they have their weaknesses. I think if Yaxel is ready to play from the tip, which he was against Tennessee, and at certain points this year he hasn't been, and he hasn't been super sharp all the time, but he's still the Big Ten Player of the Year. He's still ready to play in the Elite Eight. I think it'll be ready to go here. That is where I think Michigan can get a little bit of an advantage. Are you going to potentially put one of the bigs on him and put Karchenkov on Merez? I think we could see that. Um, and I think just because of all of the height, I mean, these are big bodies in there. And I just don't think there's going to be a lot of room, whether it's your players or the other team's players. Like, I think this might actually become a little bit more of a jump shooting game than we think because of all the, I think there'll be a ton of post touches, a ton of actions between the forwards, screening and blockers and stuff like that. But I think Yaxel is going to be interesting to see how Tommy Lloyd takes him because I think it might be a little bit more complex than just throw the ones on the ones, twos on the twos, threes on the threes. I think we could see a little bit of maneuvering there. Pete is pretty quick on his feet. I would say not super quick, but he's 7'2", so he can make up for it a little bit. But I would watch out for maybe one of the two Arizona bigs on Yaxel, at least early on.
Yeah, and this is going to be a lot of mixing and matching in this game, Shot. I bet you Yaxel has various guy that he's guarding, whether that's Berries or Bradley, if Cadeau gets in foul trouble. And that's another thing. Foul trouble in this game.
Yeah, it's huge.
Arizona's very good at getting to the free throw line, and I'm not even indicating that they flop. They're just very good at drawing contact,
Well,
getting down low.
they operate pretty exclusively in the paint, and you're going to get some whistles if you're there. 90% of the time.
Yeah, so this is a game where Perez and Mara, the foul trouble they got into the first half against Tennessee, most people barely remember that, but that's going to be a huge issue in this game if that happens, right? And then conversely, you could say the same thing
Yeah,
about Arizona. I think Sean, the X factor in this game, might not be one of the top three players on each team. I think it's going to be even the fourth option, like a Namari Burnett, Trey McKinney, or even a Roddy Gale, who's had an exceptional tournament for the second year in a row. If one of those guys can be above 12 points, hit their open threes, and, you know, kind of be the guy who cuts in like backdoor, something Roddy's done great all year. Same with Namari at times. I think that's going to be the key for Michigan. And then same thing for Arizona. Karchenkov's really stepped up his game come March. And, Owaka, if he could be a force down low and relieve Krivas if he gets in foul trouble or when he's on the bump, I think that could be an X factor in this game, Sean. But this one is the hardest to predict. I think Arizona started off as 1.5 point favorites. Clearly, Michigan's jumped to a 1.5 point as of Tuesday recording this.
yeah. It's
This
gonna
is
be like true 5 out of 10 game. I think, like you said.
Yeah, truly, I can't confidently pick a winner. So I'm gonna make Sean give a few more takes and then pick his winner, and then I'll go into it.
Foul trouble is a big thing here, Joe, because like we said, when you go down the line, they're very even at a lot of different positions. But when somebody goes in foul trouble, everybody moves up one. Okay, what is Will Cheddar going to look like against Koa Pete? Probably not going to be that good. How is Del Orso going to look like against Yaxel? Probably not that good. So I think it's going to be very much like the initial actions. Your simple plays are not going to work. You're giving these elite world class coaches 6 days to prepare. Like they're going to be ready for your go to stuff. It's going to have to be some off schedule plays for a better term. Like okay, when you have 5 seconds left in the shot clock, is Roddy Gale going to hit the three? Is Del Orso going to hit the corner three when there isn't really much going on? So I think this is a true coin toss game. I do think that it's going to be a very close victory for Arizona, 79-77.
Interesting with the score mainly. any prediction of the winner, barring like some crazy blowout, like start to finish, wouldn't really have a strong objection for. I think this game's going to be lower scoring than people think.
Yeah, it's
I
only
think
157, which is what I was thinking roughly with the score there. But
I think the under might cash in this game, Sean. I think Arizona is going to have difficulty,
yeah, I think there's going to be some
navigating
long
that size.
possessions. There's not going
Yeah,
to be
and
quick
I think
hitters and stuff like that. Yeah.
and for those who watch boxing, I think the Floyd Mayweathering, the feeling out for both teams, is going to be interesting. And if any team in that stretch pulls away, not necessarily permanently, but pulls away, that could be a factor late because I do think this is such an evenly contested game. Like, let's say Michigan's trying to adjust to Arizona. Arizona gets like an 8 to 10 point lead. That's going to be really hard for Michigan to cut into, shortly. That 10 point stretch is going to be crucial late. But getting into my prediction here, Sean, I think Michigan barely nudges it out. And I think what it comes down to is I think Michigan's depth is better than Arizona's. I think that's going to matter more than
Yeah.
Arizona's frontline talent here. I think Michigan's shooting just is a little better. And I think they hit one or two more jump shots. Give me Michigan in an ultimate nail biter, 67-64. I think Michigan hits a big shot late. I think they're up one, and Yaxel just wills his way to a bucket, and Arizona just misses a three as time expires. But if you told me vice versa, anything result wise, barring a blowout, I would really have a hard time disagreeing with you. This is truly a toss up to me.
I think the runs part of it is very accurate. Like for how good these teams are, like they aren't particularly like boom or bust type of like these teams go on runs, but it's because they are better than the other team. It's not because, okay, 12-0 run one way, 13-0 run the other way. I think there is going to be like very limited separation here, and I think like whoever gets the one run might be the difference. Um, we Michigan was able to I think both teams are good enough to score their way through some hot streaks from the other team, and they're good enough defensively to limit the hot streaks for the other team. Like I just think it's going to be really low scoring, and I think it maybe gets to. I don't think it gets to 80. That's for sure. And I think maybe if you want to play the foul game and a ton of extra possessions late, it will. But I think it is going to be really hard to separate here. But Michigan and Arizona, it's actually the second game. It was going to be first if Duke had won, but they didn't. So this one's roughly 8:49 Eastern Time at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. We will be back on either Sunday or Monday to recap it. So, Joe, unless you got anything else to add, we'll wrap it up.
All good to wrap.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.